Society shirt going. So
You wear it well.
wearing the colors. All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. Uh, Busy week this week, so we've got a number of changes and a number of things moving. The first couple of bills on the report are the our education bills. That's where the exemption for the universities and CCNA are now contained. I'm going to come back to that one if I could, because we probably have a little more to talk about on that. So let me just run through the rest of this fairly quickly and let you know where we're at. Again, feel free to chime in with any questions or comments that you may have as we go along. So that next bill, Senate Bill 2500, that's the budget bill, waiting to go to conference. It has the Moving Florida Forward program in it. It's just not the way DOT wants it. It currently says it gives the first of two installments of $2 billion this year, but it doesn't specify when that other installment would come, whether that would be next fiscal year or the year after that. Doesn't I don't think it matters as much to DOT. It just they need to know when, so that they can leverage that and get the full $7 billion that they need for all those projects. So we continue to watch that. It's just kind of sitting right now as they're getting everything lined up on the budgets, and it'll become part of the budget conference and amendments and everything that will happen at that point.
Hey,
Alan, Derek's got
Yeah.
a question.
Alan, I sent you an article this morning on this one. The lieutenant governor has now weighed in,
Right.
trying to
Yeah,
strongly encourage the legislature to give it to the governor as he's asked for it, with no games around it. He's proven to know what he's doing, so give it to him as he's asked for it.
right. I appreciate that, Derek. As a matter of fact, is Scott Perfader on the call?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, Alan.
Scott was at the press conference yesterday with the lieutenant governor. So, Scott, do you have anything you want to add in there about what she said?
No, I think the article kind of captured it. I mean, it was very straightforward remarks, very clear, fully supported for safety, congestion relief, traffic management. And again, falling back on the governor's record of success, that this would just be another successful initiative if the legislature were just to get on board and fully fund it. So she wasn't suggesting there was a plan B to that.
Right. Well, the DOT has told us that if all they get is the $2 billion that's in there right now, they would just have to use that on I-4 and nix the rest of the project. So,
Correct.
I don't know. I mean, that indicates to me that, they're a little worried about it and they're putting the PR game on, and I just don't know internally what's happening there. I don't know if that's something that there's a real problem in the legislature as far as giving them that much money, or if it's they just have it the way they have it so they can use it as a bargaining chip. I mean, I don't know the answer to that question. So, but it's interesting that they've got her out there doing that. So, we'll dig into that a little bit deeper and see if we can figure out anything that's going on. But I appreciate your help with that, Scott.
Sure.
The next couple of bills are the condo bills. I think we've got those in line. You can see, if you remember, it got to the Senate floor and it sat there for a couple of weeks, and while the negotiations were going on with the House, and the main sticking point for us, there were a lot of sticking points as far as reserves and all of that kind of stuff that the condos have to deal with. But for us, it was that the House bill was allowing general contractors and local building inspectors to do the phase one inspections. Where we've landed on that is that they would be able to do them, except that they have to be working under the responsible charge of an engineer or an architect who's going to have to sign on for that. So I don't know that changes things a whole lot. I don't think most engineers are going to want to do that, but it is their seal and their license. So as long as the engineers are still in pretty good shape there. So I think those are done. The House has agreed to that. So the Senate went ahead the last day or two and amended it and passed it out of the Senate. And so we're just waiting on the House bill. My understanding is I think the Commerce Committee meets Monday or Tuesday next week. So they should get it out of that last committee in the House and take it to the floor. Once they get it to the floor, I think the plan is they'll lay the House bill on the table, take up the Senate bill and pass it out, and it'll be on its way to the governor.
Hey, Alan, let me ask you a quick question.
Mhm.
So early on, before session, we had a discussion about the confusion between reserve studies and the structural integrity studies, the collapse inspection prevention studies that are the engineer architect driven studies. I've seen a couple articles recently that have talked about this bill that it didn't seem like they got the story right in there. Have they cleaned it up so that the integrity studies are different and not required to be done by a PE than the phase 1, phase 2 inspections?
Yeah, well, yes and no. I think there's still some, I don't know if it's confusion anymore or if they just like the reserve study. They're still calling it the structural integrity reserve study. We all think that's a misnomer. But they basically, what they've done is, they had it in the bill for a while that it had to be an architect or an engineer that did that study. They still have that language in there, but they added a reserve specialist because the people that do those have a certification so that they can do it as well.
Okay, good. I think that's what we're trying to clear up, right? Because that's who we talked to was the reserve specialists at the beginning of session. Okay.
Right.
Just want to make sure they got cleaned up.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
I've stayed in close contact with those guys, Josh and Travis, and they're happy with what they have now. So, and I think it includes engineers and architects and has us in that if that's the way the owner wants to go. So, but like I say too, this bill's there's gonna be cleanups on this bill every year for a while. So. But I think it's in good shape. My fear going into this year was there would be an attempt to try to repeal it,
Right.
and we haven't seen that. And I think everybody's real solid on the fact that these inspections need to occur. It's just working out these details. So.
Okay. Thanks, Alan.
All right. The next couple of bills, the licensing bill came back up. We thought it was.
Alan, before you move on to the next one, I did see an article that was forwarded to me about the bill to where I guess they're introducing some ability to waive funding these reserves again. So, and I don't know that we want to get into that, but I think that's how we got to where we are, and now they're starting to carve out opportunities to waive some of these things again. So I'm just put that on the.
I think they do. I think they do have some language in there in some special circumstances, and it's going to be like that they find themselves sort of fully funded, or they don't have to. If they've got their reserves in good shape, then they might be able to waive them, something along those lines. But honestly, I mean, we took the position early on that we weren't going to involve ourselves in that.
Correct.
We were just saying, here's what you need to do if you don't want these buildings to fall down, and let everybody else figure out how they're going to pay for it and what the reserve requirements are and all of that. So I haven't weighed in, into that, but obviously the reserve study people have, and I think most of them are comfortable. And, my hat's off to Senator Bradley. She has really wrapped her arms around this one, and she seems to get it. She wants to work with everybody, but she's adamant that these inspections need to happen. And they need to start happening at a faster pace. And so she's doing what she can. And that's a messy area to be in, that condo reserve funding and all that. So, but I think we're in a good spot. But again, that's one that, we just kind of go, yeah, it sounds good, but we're not going to weigh in. We just want the inspections. So.
Yeah. I just put a link to the article that was forwarded to me this morning on that, because the other thing that's included in there, in addition to the potential waiving of some of the reserves, is that they believe that the current bill also gives the local jurisdictions the ability to decide whether or not the 25-year applies or not to coastal structures. The three.
Right. Yeah, if you remember, there was, I think our initial recommendation was like a 20 and 25-year deal, depending on how close the building was to the water. Where they've landed is basically it's 30 years, unless the local building official determines that, due to the proximity to the coast or whatever, that they want it to be 25 years in their jurisdiction.
Right.
But the thing they were really trying to get away from was have it in law that it's 25 years at the coast and within 3 miles of the coast, and it's 30 inland. And how do you draw that line? And, you get into all that. So they just set it at 30 and gave some discretion to the local building official.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, the licensing bill again has come up. That's the one that, basically in its original form, just said if you were licensed, it deals with a lot of different professions, but for ours in particular, it says, if you're a licensed PE in any other state, basically as long as haven't been convicted of a felony, you can come to Florida and sign the paperwork and you'll be a PE here too. And it, disregards education, testing requirements, that sort of thing. I think we're landing in a good spot there. Derek, I don't know how much you've talked with John about this. John's been negotiating on this one a lot this week. The Senator Collins is the one that's really in charge of this one. And I think where we landed as of yesterday is that they're basically going to let each of the professions, the boards that regulate those professions, have complete rulemaking authority to enforce, the criteria that they have under state law, which is what we already have. So it seems to me like they just want to pass something and we're going to say the same thing. We're just going to say it differently. Right. And I don't know under that scenario if the bill makes it all the way, but it is coming up. They passed it out of a committee in the House this week. They haven't really amended it in any great way yet, but that's coming and it'll be in the Senate next week. So there's still some confusion around that. I'm waiting to see some language. I know John's working real close with George Levesque with the architects. George is an attorney with Gray Robinson and was kind of putting together the language for us and them, working with them. I'm waiting to see this language. As soon as I do, I'll get it out to our CLGR and we'll move forward from there. But I mean, it does sound like they know that, they can't have this quote universal interstate license type deal, that we're gonna have to, stick with our criteria that's been set here in Florida for various different professions. So, but that one's back up there on our important list. And so those are kind of the main ones. Let me go through some of these ones we've been monitoring, because I'll probably take a few of these off. If you'll remember early on, we were concerned about these two education bills, 999 and 266, because they would have prohibited funding of DEI initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in classes and that sort of thing. They've taken that language out of the Senate bill. So if it comes out of the House bill, then we have no reason to care anymore. Personally, people might, but because there's a lot of things that this bill does to the university, as I guess I would say. I started to say for, but I'm not sure they view it as there's anything good in there for them. But if they get that out, then it doesn't mess with the ABET accreditation or anything like that. And that was their specific reason for taking that language out, is the effect that would have on accreditation on a number of different industries, including ours. So, but I think that one's a done deal. I don't see them putting that language back in at any point. And I think if they want the bill, I think the House will agree and they'll move it forward. But it still has a little bit to go. I will say that this is not updated if you click on that bill, Senate Bill 266, because when I went to the website last night, they don't have the new information up, or they didn't at the time. But since I'm taking it off anyway, we'll just let that be. Next group is the ratification of the DEP rules. As you can see, the House bill is awaiting action by the full House. It is coming up in the Infrastructure Strategies Committee in the Senate next week. And for those that haven't, maybe new to the call, that does not ratify the stormwater rule that we've been dealing with the last several months. But it would be the vehicle, if they tried to get that stormwater rule ratified, that they would need to come to get it on there. So I'm glad to see that, you know, it's moving, and hopefully the House will go ahead and take action. Today is the last day of the 21-day comment period for that stormwater rule. They issued a notice of change 3 weeks ago after the hearing that was held here in Tallahassee that many of our members attended. And, you know, even as of a couple of days ago, I talked to the lobbyist for the Stormwater Association, and she was thinking there was a couple of her members that may challenge the rule, but she wasn't sure. And, you know, there were some people on the, sort of the business end of it that had talked about that, but I think they've come to a spot where they don't want to do that. You know, they would just rather let it be and let's work on it for the next year and not go through the cost and the process of a challenge. So at the end of the day, we'll know. And you know, I don't think it has any support from the business side or the environmental side. So even if they tried to get something ratified, I think they'd have a really uphill battle. So, but again, we'll know this afternoon. Public construction, that was put on there last week for the first time. It's not moving, and they did take out language that would have prohibited local preference. That would be a contentious issue in our industry and many others. Some people support that sort of stuff, some people don't. But we haven't brought it up to get an official position just because I don't think, I mean, it's close. If they wanted to run something, they could move it, but it seems like it's kind of bogged down, and with them taking that language out, we're not very concerned about any of the rest of the bill. So I think we're in good shape there. Sovereign immunity hasn't moved for a while in the House and hasn't moved at all in the Senate. So I think we're, you know, for all intensive purposes, we're done there, but we still will keep an eye on it. And that DOT bill has seemed to have stalled as well. The last two bills on the report are bills that have passed. That includes the statute of repose bill, Senate Bill 360 that we've discussed in the past, and also House Bill 327. The Senate sponsor on that bill was Senate Bill 408. Had told us all along he wouldn't allow the language in there that will allow the contractors to design expansions of a system, you know, up to 50 heads. In the end, he said he changed his mind and took the Senate bill and they passed it. So talking to John yesterday, I am putting together a letter, and we are reaching out to the fire marshals, the Fire Chiefs Association, and others to join us, and we're going to ask the governor to veto that bill, because to expand fire sprinkler systems would no longer require, you know, designed by an engineer, or even, I think a lot of times the contractors will actually lay out the design, and then, you know, the engineer looks at it and approves it, changes it, whatever he needs to do, and then puts his sign and seal on it. So we will be asking the governor to veto that one. And then let me go back up. This one, the CCNA thing is a big problem. CLGR will meet at 10 o'clock this morning for us to discuss that. It's just got backing from, you know, seems like God and everybody else. But it is in the bill. It is basically in the budget for coming out of the Senate. This week, the House popped it up on basically this bill 1259 is a charter school funding bill. And they put it on there, and one could argue germanity. I've heard that, but they, you know, if we did that, we can hold it up for a day, but they'll just put it somewhere else if we were successful. but they're taking this route and they're running it through the education side because it gets us out of, committees like, commerce, regulated industries, the committees that would normally deal with an issue like this. This isn't a funding bill. It's not a finance bill. It is a, procurement of design services and construction issue for us. And, but they're putting it over there. That puts us in a spot where it's different legislators. Most of the people that serve on education type committees or healthcare and stuff are different from the ones that are on the business side of it. It's not 100% true, but true most of the time. And when they were debating that bill the other day, all they were talking about was the funding for the charter schools. And of course, you got the Republicans for it and the Democrats against it. It came up a couple of times. The chancellor of the state university system was there again, and his argument is simply this. He gets up there and he says, we really like this language because it will give us flexibility to get the best value for the citizens of Florida. And that's all he said. He did bring up, I would say, that 5 years ago, they passed this bill in the House and we were successful in getting it stopped in the Senate, but he brought that up. So he has not forgotten. But he's got a lot of extra help here too, because I can't say for sure, and I don't have any indication that the governor himself is involved. But we do have to remember the chancellor was appointed recently by the governor. He's part of that inner circle, and in that education realm and those committees, if the chancellor walks in and says this is a good idea, they're going to vote for it. So we will hit them hard when they go to the appropriations committee. I'll be sending out another notice for our members to send letters and emails and that. And we'll keep doing what we do. But I know John is also working. I sent him a couple of ideas. One is to, we have a threshold on CCNA that is sort of the general threshold, not talking about continuing contracts, which comes up a lot, but just the general threshold, just 325,000 for construction and 35,000 for studies. It's probably been years since that was adjusted. So we're floating that idea that we could adjust those, and you could get a lot of the smaller projects maybe out from under CCNA, but keep medium sized, larger projects. And we're floating that to see. It's kind of in their court now. They can pass this as it is, I think, if they want. We've got, as far as I can tell, we don't have a lot of help from leadership or anybody else really on this one that's going to help slow it down this time. So we're trying to throw some things out there. If it is going to pass, I've asked John to we'll talk to them about putting language in requiring a study, say 4 years after it takes effect, to compare CCNA projects that they did before the law passed to what they do over that first 4 years, and see if the studies that we have a number of studies that say, it's going to result in more change orders, more delays, higher costs, more maintenance in the future and that sort of thing. And, hopefully if those are correct, we would be able to see it and we could get it changed back. I think also that would give us the benefit of, one of the fears I know is that if this passes the way it is, we'll have cities and counties knocking on the door next year. And if we could have a study out there, a future study like that, it would give us the opportunity to say, well, let's wait and see what the study says, because we still believe you're going to find that this is more expensive. And but it's still fluid, it's still in motion, so it's not done yet. But they certainly have the upper hand on this. And with that bit of good news, I'll take any questions that anybody has.
Well, and I was just gonna say, I mean, I've been exchanging text messages and trying to get him on the phone, but I know Derek knows him better. The vice chair of that committee is Senator Jones. Just trying to figure out if there was any angle. I mean, obviously he's a Democrat, but if there's any angle that we could use to try to get some fuel in there. Derek, I don't know. I think you guys were fraternity brothers or something like that.
We're classmates in college.
Yeah. So I know you guys are close. And I don't know if there was anybody else, even on the Senate side, that we should even think to reach out to on the Democratic side. Obviously, I guess the Republicans are going to stay in line. But if there was somebody or some angle or anything. I just wasn't sure if, you know, there's someone else we could reach out to. I mean, I know just obviously Laura's working on her grassroots thing, but we have close relationships just in the company with Senators Powell and Berman as well. But, you know, I mean, Jones is the vice chair of that committee, so that's the reason why I was trying to reach out to Shove. So anyway, we could discuss strategy or anything else at the CLGR meeting or whatever else. Just wanted to bring that up.
Well, I think, you know, I appreciate it. I mean, anybody that we know, you know, we'll try anything. You know, we're negotiating directly with, you know, the chancellor, and John's met with him personally. You know, we talked to Representative Kennedy, who's the sponsor of House Bill 1259. He basically just told us, you know, that you know, it concerns her that she would raise those concerns, but that she was being told to do it. And so, you know, that tells you leadership's involved, and that's where the discussions have to happen. We're going to have to get, you know, Renner, or I don't know if Perez is involved in this or not, but, you know, we're going to have to get leadership and the chancellor, you know, to agree to something to change this. I don't see, it's worth a shot, don't get me wrong, but I don't see that, you know, they're really going to be able to help us much here.
One of my board members is close to Renner. I could try to see if he can get a hold of him.
Yeah. Well, Pete Sheridan hooked me up a phone call with Tony Mafood from Eisman Russo, and he was going to give Renner a call. And those are, you know, people that know, you know, folks in leadership, whether it's on the House or the Senate side. You know, because I met, you know, at PE days, I went with the group that met with the Senate president, and you know, when I brought this up, she just kind of laughed and she goes, "I don't know." She's like, "There's a whole lot of people that like that bill," and you can just tell, you know, that first of all, it wasn't really the place to get into that discussion, but that we weren't going to get much from her. So,
hey, Alan, this is Sean Donahue. So I watched the hearing that day, and you're right. Jennifer Kennedy is a freshman, but she's the wife of Justice Charles Kennedy. So I don't know how many people are going to push against that, but the CCNA aspect of that bill, as you mentioned, it's all about the charter schools and so forth. But that CCNA language is basically a line hidden in there, and it didn't. Right. It was interesting. Each university had a representative in the hearing that stood up and spoke to flexibility, and that's all they said. Exactly as you said, but it seemed like our message got lost in all that. It's, you know. I guess we did have a couple people stand up and speak, one from the architect side, but you know, the university thing is one thing. Obviously, we're very concerned about the counties and municipalities and whatever we can do to start building strategy for next year.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, and that's why they're doing it this way. You know, that 2 years ago they brought this bill up, and they brought it up as a straight up bill to exempt the universities from CCNA. And we dang near killed it in the first House committee. And I forget exactly which committee that was, but it was a committee that deals with business issues and contracting issues and that sort of thing. And they didn't even try to move it past that. They know if they go that route, that will probably be successful. And that's why they're doing it on the education side. Those people don't understand contracting. It's not what they're interested in. And if the chancellor of the university system and 10 different procurement officers from universities stand up there and say, this gives us flexibility, and we believe it'll save us money. I mean, that was the other thing I picked up on. You know, they believe it will save them money. And, you know, we're standing over going, we've got studies that say it won't. And but they're not interested. They're gonna pass it on through, especially a committee like that, because they're gonna look at it and say, well, you know, it's still got to go to appropriations and it's still got to go to the floor. So I'm not going to oppose it now. Now, we did have, I mean, that was a party line vote in that committee. The Democrats voted against the bill. The Republicans voted for it, but that was all based on the charter school funding. And nobody voted, you know, at all due to the issue of, you know, the CCNA being in there. And even the way they say, even the way they've got the language in there, they don't mention CCNA. They don't mention 287.055. It just simply says that, you know, The universities can use, a variety of different approaches to procurement, and allows them that, they'll look at you and say, well, we can still use CCNA if we want to, but we don't have to. And so it doesn't to say that it repeat or exempts them from CCNA, I guess is close, but to say it repeals it isn't even true. It just, it just frees them up to not use it, which they won't. And so that they've been very coy, and just from the lobbyist perspective of it, this was well thought out, and I'll give you another one. The amendment for House Bill 1259 actually dropped late in the night on Friday night last week, which is right before Easter weekend. So there's very little that you can do. It's hard to get a hold of, for us, it's hard to get a hold of members. It's hard to get a hold of legislators. It's Easter week. So we roll in on Monday, and that's, we sent out the alert to the members and did what we could, but they've thought this one through. That they're avoiding the committees where we could really give them a problem. And I felt bad for the lady from AIA that, she traveled from Tampa. She's the president of AIA this year. She literally spoke for 1 minute. Nobody asked her any questions. They didn't even act like she was there. And the chairman said, thank you. And she went back and sat down.
Was that Beverly Frank, or who was it this year?
It was, I don't recall her name, Scott. It was,
Okay.
She introduced herself as being from Tampa and the current president of AIA.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, I did. I had Ken Vogel came up a few years ago when the speaker was trying to get rid of CCNA in total. And it's kind of the same thing. He had his whole presentation laid out. And just before he walked up there, the chairman said, all right, due to the number of people that want to speak, I'm limiting everybody to 2 minutes. And so it was kind of the same thing. The legislators sit there and kind of give you a blank stare, and when you're done, they thank you, and you go back and you sit down. So, but we'll keep working. We're not going to stop. If we see a way to stop this thing and kill it, we will dang sure do it. But I think we need to be looking at some alternatives if we can get them to agree to anything else. To try to save the concept, and especially for, like I say, medium and large size projects. And, I've got to believe if the current law, the threshold is $325,000, it has to have been a long time since that was ever adjusted. And so, maybe we can get some traction there, but, we'll just have to wait and see. Now, John is supposed to be on the call at 10 o'clock. Peter, so he'll have some more to add.
Alan, this is Buckley Williams here. If this passes, it would only affect state-funded projects, correct? So if there's any federal funds, this would not be applicable.
No, that's true in transportation, but once you get outside of transportation, there's a few areas where if federal money's involved, that QBS or CCNA needs to be used, but it's not all that common outside of the transportation area.
Got it.
So I think even if a project does have federal funding, they could still choose their method of procurement.
Thanks.
Sorry, I know that's not the answer any of us want, but anybody else? All right, well, keep your fingers crossed. Watch out for the alert when it comes out. And, get as many people sending as many messages as we can. People, if you can reach out to your own state rep, your own state senator, that'll be helpful if we can get some numbers. But we need to put on a really good show here and let them know, how displeased this industry is that they're doing this. Without cussing at them, please.
And we're still meeting at
you gotta
11.
provide.
I'm sorry, we're still meeting at 11, Alan?
CLGR's at 10.
10.
Oh, 10. Okay, thank you.
And Alan, can you prepare some language for us to send to our legislators?
I already have. I need to send it to Laura real quick. It's not really language. I'll just show you kind of the current statute and how, you know, we could change that and maybe get something done. But yeah, I'll send that to Laura right away.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you all for showing up. We'll do it again next week. Hopefully I got better news next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks,
Thank
Alan.
you. Thanks, Alan.